Almost 30 years ago, back when I was attending middle school at Algonquin Middle School in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, Lee Strobel was one of the evangelistic ministers at Willow Creek Community Church in Algonquin, just a few miles away from where I lived. And Lee was a former atheist, still had several friends that were atheists, including one in particular who was a national spokesman for American Atheists Incorporated. And yeah, that's a thing, and there's other organizations very much like that. But Lee and his friend came up with the idea of holding a debate where the case for atheism and the case for Christianity could both just be laid out, and the audience could decide where the evidence leads, which one presented the best case. And the atheists chose Frank Zindler, a colleague of the renowned atheist Madalyn Murray O'Hair and former professor of biology and science. Representing the Christian view would be author and apologist Dr. William Lane Craig. The news media, just amazed that a church was unafraid to tackle tough objections by skeptics, was quickly abuzz. And the church started getting phone calls from radio stations all across the country. Pretty soon over 100 different radio stations signed up to broadcast the event. And the night of the debate, traffic became gridlocked around the church as nearly 8,000 people ran down the aisles to find a seat. When was the last time you saw people rushing into a church? Like gridlock packed around the church because so many people were trying to get into it. But over 8,000 people showed up, and William Lane Craig that night presented evidence from philosophy, cosmology, physics, and history as he laid out the case for Christianity. And at the end of the debate, the audience cast ballots. And an overwhelming 82% of the atheists, agnostics, and other non-believers voted that the evidence for Christianity was the most compelling. And get this, 47 people walked in as unbelievers and walked out as Christians that evening. And what's more, not one person became an atheist that night either. It was just a stunning affirmation that Christians really have an unfair advantage in an intellectual shootout because we have truth on our side. And yet, despite overwhelming evidence that God is real and Christianity is true, the number of people who don't believe in God is just continuing to increase year after year. According to surveys conducted by the Pew Research Center, 23% of Americans ages 18 to 25, so like the next generation of young adults, identify themselves as non-religious, atheist, or agnostic, which is nearly double what it was 30 years ago when that debate was held outside Chicago. And you may never be in the position where you have to debate an atheist on a stage in front of 8,000 people. But in a world where best-selling books claim that God is a delusion and that religion poisons everything, where many university professors seem bent on destroying the beliefs of young Christians, and where the media often portrays believers as shallow, bigoted, villainous hypocrites, it's increasingly important that all of us be able to articulate the reasons why our faith makes sense. In fact, God expects nothing less of us. The Bible actually says in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. Have you ever encountered someone who dismissed God as a fairy tale or Christianity as anti-science? Now, how do you typically feel when somebody challenges or makes fun of your faith? Wouldn't you like to be able to defend your faith intelligently? Or on the flip side of that coin, maybe you're skeptical about the Christian faith or God's existence. Maybe you have some doubts of your own that you're kind of wrestling with and you need to deal with. Over the next 5 Sundays, using science, philosophy, history, and a little old-fashioned common sense, I want to give you 5 good reasons to believe in God. Think of them as the fingerprints of God. They are cosmology, creation, conscience, Christ, and conversion. 5 C's that all point toward the existence and the reality of the God that we know and worship here at Blooming Grove. And today we're going to start with the evidence from cosmology, also known as the cosmological argument for the existence of God. Cosmology, as I'm sure most of you know, is the study of the cosmos. It's the study of the universe. And cosmology not only tells us that there is a God, but it also tells us a little bit about that God. The Bible tells us in Romans chapter 1, it says, this is Psalm 19. The heavens proclaim the glory of God. The skies display his craftsmanship. Day after day they continue to speak. Night after night they make him known. They speak without a sound or word. Their voice is never heard. Yet their message has gone throughout the earth, and their words to all the world. So the Hebrews didn't have a word for universe or galaxy. So when they spoke of the cosmos, they used the word heavens. And the Bible, in other words, is saying that we can look to the heavens, the stars, the universe around us, and we can see the glory of God. We can know things about God without ever having to open a Bible. So what does the cosmos teach us about God? What is it saying day after day and night after night? Well, before we go any further, I want to play a short video for you that lays out the cosmological argument in a clear, concise way, probably better than anything that I could do up here on my own. So let's watch this video together.
Does God exist? Or is the material universe all that is, or ever was, or ever will be? One approach to answering this question is the cosmological argument. It goes like this. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore, the universe has a cause. Is the first premise true? Let's consider. Believing that something can pop into existence without a cause is more of a stretch than believing in magic. At least with magic, you've got a hat and a magician. And if something can come into being from nothing, then why don't we see this happening all the time? No, everyday experience and scientific evidence confirm our first premise. If something begins to exist, it must have a cause. But what about our second premise? Did the universe begin, or has it always existed? Atheists have typically said that the universe has been here forever. The universe is just there, and that's all. First, let's consider the second law of thermodynamics. It tells us the universe is slowly running out of usable energy, and that's the point. If the universe had been here forever, it would have run out of usable energy by now. The second law points us to a universe that has a definite beginning. This is further confirmed by a series of remarkable scientific discoveries. In 1915, Albert Einstein presented his general theory of relativity. This allowed us, for the first time, to talk meaningfully about the past history of the universe. Next, Alexander Friedmann and George Lemaitre, each working with Einstein's equations, predicted that the universe is expanding. Then in 1929, Edwin Hubble measured the red shift in light from distant galaxies. This empirical evidence confirmed not only that the universe is expanding, but that it sprang into being from a single point in the finite past. It was a monumental discovery, almost beyond comprehension. However, not everyone is fond of a finite universe, so it wasn't long before alternative models popped into existence. But one by one, these models failed to stand the test of time. More recently, 3 leading cosmologists, Arvind Borde, Alan Guth, and Alexander Vilenkin, prove that any universe which has on average been expanding throughout its history cannot be eternal in the past, but must have an absolute beginning. This even applies to the multiverse, if there is such a thing. This means that scientists can no longer hide behind a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Any adequate model must have a beginning, just like the standard model. It's quite plausible then that both premises of the argument are true. This means that the conclusion is also true. The universe has a cause. And since the universe can't cause itself, its cause must be beyond the space-time universe. It must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, uncaused, and unimaginably powerful, much like God. The cosmological argument shows that, in fact, it is quite reasonable to believe that God does exist.
Rather than give you my typical 3-point alliterated sermon, which I enjoy doing so much, today what I want to do is use the same logical argument presented in the video that we just watched, which, by the way, comes from Dr. William Lane Craig's current ministry, Reasonable Faith, and they produce all sorts of different videos. I'll use a few more of these over the next few weeks. But I want to take that same argument and just kind of unpack it a little bit for you. And those of you who maybe took like a debate class or something like that in high school will be familiar with the format of this argument. It's laid out in a syllogism, with two premises and a conclusion. If the first two premises are true, then the conclusion must logically be true as well. And so the first premise in the argument is that the universe, or that everything that begins to exist has a cause. The second premise is that the universe began to exist, and therefore the universe has a cause. If the first two premises are true, then the conclusion is also true. Put another way, there's only three possible explanations for the existence of the universe. Why anything at all exists. First, the universe just simply popped into existence, uncaused, for no reason whatsoever. That's one possible explanation. Another possible explanation is that the universe has just always been here. It's just eternal, never changes, it's always existed. And then the third is that something caused the universe to come into existence. Something beyond the universe itself brought the universe into existence. So let's explore those different possibilities, starting with our first premise: whatever begins to exist has a cause. Now, I think that this first premise is virtually undeniable by any rational person. I think just about everybody in the world would agree that things don't just pop into existence uncaused. For something to come into being without any cause whatsoever would be for something to come from nothing. And common sense and scientific evidence tell us that you just cannot get something from nothing. To claim that you can, it just defies logic. No one sincerely believes that things like, say, a horse or an Eskimo village can just pop into existence, uncaused, with no reason behind it. So why would we think that a universe could pop into existence uncaused? I think Maria said it well in The Sound of Music when she told Captain Von Trapp, "Nothing comes from nothing, and nothing ever could." Simply put, there's just no free lunches. The conditions that hold true in our universe preclude the possibility of matter or energy springing out of nothing. But amazingly, in order to avoid the obvious conclusion, that's exactly what many atheists claim today. Richard Dawkins wrote in his book, The Ancestor's Tale, "The fact that life evolved out of nearly nothing, some 10 billion years after the universe evolved literally out of nothing, is a fact so staggering that I would be mad to attempt words to do it justice." And he does sound mad to me making that claim. Quentin Smith of Western Michigan University likewise claims, though, that the most rational position to hold is that the universe came from nothing, by nothing, and for nothing. It sounds like the Gettysburg Address of atheism. From nothing, by nothing, for nothing. And the renowned atheist Lawrence Krauss actually wrote a book called A Universe from Nothing, which received some pretty scathing peer reviews, because in it he defines nothing as something, and that nothing, which is something, caused everything to come into existence. But this sort of intellectual absurdity just, I think, proves what G.K. Chesterton once said. He said, "It's often supposed that when people stop believing in God, that they believe in nothing. Alas, it is much worse than that. When people stop believing in God, they can believe in anything." And that's true. When people give up on believing in God, things that seem totally irrational, unbelievable, become acceptable. Ray Comfort, in his book, Nothing Created Everything, The Scientific Impossibility of Atheistic Evolution, writes, "Anyone who tries to actually justify that nothing created everything has to be insane. It's a scientific impossibility." He continues, "There's no way to say it kindly, but such thoughts show that the atheist doesn't think, and proves the Bible right when it says the fool has said in his heart there is no God." And I think Ray Comfort, although kind of blunt, is exactly right. Common sense and scientific evidence confirm that nothing comes from nothing, and nothing ever will. So with that first premise, I think, firmly established, let's move on to our second premise, which is the universe began to exist. If the universe didn't spring from nothing, then perhaps the universe is just eternal. It's always been here. And prior to the 1920s, that was actually the widely accepted view. Most philosophers and scientists agreed that the universe was static and that it's just always existed. And that's a view that dates all the way back to like Aristotle and Plato and other philosophers like that. Most people assumed that that was the case. That was also the assumption of Albert Einstein when he began to apply his new theory of gravity, called the general theory of relativity, to the universe in 1917. But Einstein quickly realized that it didn't quite add up the way he expected it to. And so, in his words, he had to fudge the numbers in order to maintain the illusion of an eternal universe. Something that he later came to call the biggest blunder of his career. Because when he did the math correctly, it portrayed a universe that was either blowing up like a balloon or else collapsing in on himself. And so using those numbers that Einstein came up with, other scientists built upon those equations and made predictions about our universe. Thanks to some astonishing develops in modern astronomy, we now have strong evidence that our universe had an absolute beginning, commonly referred to as the Big Bang. In the 1920s, Russian mathematician Alexander Friedman and George Lemaitre, as mentioned in the video, developed models of an expanding universe based on Einstein's equations, and these predictions were confirmed in 1929 by Edwin Hubble when he observed that red shift in the light from distant galaxies, which indicates that it's getting further away. You know, the light changes as you're looking at it from a distance, and as it's moving away, you see that red shift in the spectrum. And so when everything around us is moving away, it gives us the realization that everything is spreading out further and further from itself. And so when you trace the universe backward in time, that expansion rate backward in time, everything gets closer and closer together until you reach a point where the distance between any 2 points is just absolute zero. And at that point, often referred to as a singularity, you've reached the boundary of space and time. And the standard Big Bang model, with slight variations, is almost universally accepted among astronomers and physicists, thus predicts an absolute beginning to the universe. And as if that weren't enough, we've also got added confirmation from the field of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics predicts that given enough time, the universe will spread out to the point where there's no usable energy in the universe. It's kind of like if you imagine gas filling a room. When you release gas into a room, it spreads out until it fills the entire room. And so it gets thinner and thinner, and the particles get further and further away from each other. And that's what's happening to our universe. Everything is just spreading out and getting further and further away until at some point in the distant future, Nothing will be able to function. Stars won't be able to burn. Molecules won't be able to bond. Everything will just be so spread out that it reaches entropy. And that's what scientists often refer to as the heat death of the universe. And that means that if the universe were eternal in the past with no beginning, then it would have burned up and died out an eternity ago, because it only has a limited amount of time before the universe runs out of energy. And, because thermodynamics is so well understood by physicists today, it's highly improbable that those findings would ever be reversed. So the cosmological evidence for an absolute beginning to the universe is insurmountable. On the basis, therefore, of both scientific evidence and philosophical evidence, which I didn't even touch on, which we don't have time to get into, we have every reason to believe that the universe began to exist. And since everything that begins to exist has a cause, then it follows logically and inescapably that the universe must have a cause. Since the cosmos didn't just appear by nothing and from nothing, and it hasn't existed for all eternity, then there's only one other option. It's the one articulated in the first chapter of the first book of the Bible. Long before Einstein's theory of relativity or the discoveries made by the Hubble telescope, the Bible declared in Genesis 1 verse 1, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." The Bible predicted thousands of years ago that the universe not only had a beginning, that it began to exist, but it also identified the cause. In an age of empirical science, nothing could be more certain, clear, or correct. And what's more, the Bible also makes this remarkable claim. It says in Romans chapter 1, do you have the next verse there? There. "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." So this is another passage here where the Bible is telling us that you don't need the Bible, that you don't need some special revelation from God. You can just look at what God has made and you can know that God is, and you can know certain things about him. These invisible qualities, his eternal nature, his divine power. And I think the study of cosmology has proven this verse true. So what does cosmology tell us about the cause of the universe? Well, first, we know that whatever caused the universe must transcend the universe, because the universe can't cause itself. We don't create ourselves. Whatever caused us, whatever created us, has to be beyond the universe. And so we have this transcendent cause. And the cause has to be timeless, because time began at the Big Bang. It also has to be spaceless and immaterial, because space and matter came into existence at the Big Bang. It also has to be unimaginably powerful, since all energy came into existence at the Big Bang. Thus, we have a transcendent, timeless, spaceless, immaterial, unimaginably powerful cause that chose to create the universe. And let me explain that last one, the choosing. If this was some natural force that existed prior to the universe that caused the universe, and all of these conditions existed, then if it was an eternally existent cause with all these conditions met, then the universe would have been created an eternity ago. But the universe wasn't created an eternity ago. It was created at a very specific moment in time. Time began at that moment, and it's only been for a brief time that the universe has existed. And so in order for this cause to create the universe in time, at a time, I think the most reasonable conclusion is that the cause chose to create the universe. This isn't just a mindless thing. This was a personal cause to the universe. And so we have a immensely powerful, transcendent, timeless, spaceless, personal creator of the universe. I don't know about you, but that sounds a whole lot like the God of the Bible to me. In fact, all of the attributes necessary for the cause of the universe are also ascribed to God in the Bible as intrinsic qualities, his invisible qualities. I like the way Abraham Lincoln once put it. He said, "I can see how it might be possible for a man to look down upon the earth and be an atheist. But I cannot conceive how he could look up into the heavens and say there is no God." So the first fingerprint of God is cosmology. In short, the best explanation for the existence of the universe is the existence of God. Without God, we wouldn't have anything else. I want to encourage everyone here today to maybe one night this week, go out on your porch and just look up into the heavens and listen to what they have to say. Gaze at the galaxy and stand in awe of the God who spoke the universe into existence. And I also want to prompt you to come back again next week as we dig into this subject a little bit deeper and we explore the evidence of creation. So if you have a notebook and a pen, bring those with you. You might want to take some notes during the sermon. And if you have friends or family members who are skeptical about God's existence, bring them too. I think that they might enjoy it. In the meantime, I think the coolest thing about the creator of the cosmos is that he's invited us to know him personally. He says in Scripture in Jeremiah 29, verse 13, "If you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me." And so I want to encourage everyone today to do just that, to look for God with all your heart. And if I can help in any way, then please come talk with me while we stand and sing together. Let's sing, church.